So I challenge you all just to take 1 minute every morning and either read it on a post-it on your refrigerator or recite it to yourself in the mirror, just to remind yourself, what is your purpose for waking up every day and dedicating all of your time and energy towards mastering this profession? And that purpose is going to be your centerpiece of how you make decisions probably for the rest of your life. What I hope that purpose is to become a great physician that's abundant in knowledge and compassionate towards your patients. And by doing so, you'll reap the benefits of furthering your career by improving the quality of life of others. And that's really what medicine is all about.
A scalpel in the hands of an individual, it can do unbelievable damage. In the hands of a professional, of a doctor, it saves lives. It's the same thing with failure. It's how you use it. It's that drive inside of you. The dark side is filled with failure, but it's the fuel that burns you like something that's never burned inside you before.
And it's extremely important to keep the same mentality that I mentioned in my step 1 video, is to prioritize every day of your life. And making those sacrifices and trying to tell yourself, what am I going to do today to further my goal? Are you motivated and dedicated enough to just kill this exam? Hello and welcome to this week's episode of MEDspiration. I am student Dr. Alexander Al-Sadi, as well as the Director of Education for MEDspiration. In this week's episode, I'll be covering 1. Resources for Step 2 CK, 2. My daily routine and schedule, and 3. Assessments and my test day experience. Stay tuned. So when starting with resources, I just want to get out of the way what you have to use, the gold standard, which is, of course, UWorld. In my opinion, it's even more important for CK than it was for Step 1, and it was pretty damn important for Step 1. For resources, it's a little bit different than how Step 1 preparation was. It's not as concrete, and there are many types of resources for CK. So probably the key that you've heard before is just to pick one. As for review books, there's 3 that I've seen around that are popular. The first one is Step Up to Medicine, which is beneficial because it has just about everything in here. This is probably the only review book that you can actually learn from. I've stated in my other video for Step 1 that review books should only be used as a guide to keep you organized and to annotate UWorld explanations in. This one actually has abundant information that you can probably learn a lot of things from. But I wouldn't recommend it if you don't have a lot of time, because you probably can't get through the whole thing. The next one is the first aid, which for Step 1, this was it. No other review book you used. Step 1, you got the first aid. I have never opened up a page in this book. I heard it was kind of iffy from some people. Some people said they liked it. It's what you're comfortable with. And the third one is Master the Boards, and it is a pretty good review book. A lot of white space on it, so it doesn't have a lot of information. But it is a very good book to keep you organized with organ systems and the diseases and some of the managements. But again, they just are to be used as a guide to annotate your UWorld explanations. As for videos, there's really only 2 I know, and that is Kaplan videos, online med ed videos. And they're kind of for 2 different types of people. So if you are a student who doesn't really have great experience clinically with your attendees, Kaplan videos are extensive and time consuming, but they do give you a physician's perspective on medicine, which is helpful, and they're educators, so they are knowledgeable. The other type of student for Kaplan is if you already graduated. Obviously, you want to be able to think like an American physician. What better way is to watch some Kaplan teachers who are American physicians. The online med ed videos, I would recommend everyone just giving them a try. Take an hour out of your day, go onto their website. There's a lot of free videos. He's not time consuming at all, and he keeps everything very organized. So I do recommend you at least checking them out to see if you like them. I made my own notes from Step 1, And what I did was integrated my new notes that I made from UWorld for CK into my Step 1 notes, or vice versa. Made notes for CK and I kind of threw in a lot of my Step 1 notes that correlated the same organ systems so I could keep reviewing that pathophysiology and pharmacology with my CK notes. So as for your daily schedule, I've noticed two types of students that have these two different types of schedules. Some people are in their third year and they have extremely time-consuming clinicals. It's where they're always at the hospital, they have very little time to study. And the other type is people that have very light clinical schedules, or even they're already graduated, so they're all on dedicated study time. And these two types of schedules are the opposite, but they're both extremely beneficial if you use it to your advantage. So no matter what kind of schedule you have, we're all working towards the same goal, and we're all working extremely hard for this year leading up to the CK. For the very time-consuming clerkships, obviously most of your time and most of your learning is going to be in the hospital. And I can't stress how important that learning is, because half of our exam for CK, in my experience at least, was intuitive. Couldn't get from the books, you couldn't get from questions, you got it from just your intuition as a physician. So use that as your advantage. I just want to kind of give you the big picture of how your clerkship should go about, how your routine should go for each clerkship. And it's all kind of the same. So I just want to give an example of, say, psychiatry. So you start your psychiatry rotation. The first thing you should do, obviously you should already have UWorld purchased at least for that year. And you should go to your rotation, right? Learn, see the patients, learn from your attendees, kind of jot down the diseases you saw, the managements you saw. And then when you get home that night, you should do at least, 5 to 15 UWorld questions depending on your medical knowledge. The more you know from Step 1, the less you'll have to learn on CK for management. So I would do those questions, and you do this every day. Same routine every day, do the questions, annotate into your review book if you have one, or if you want to make brand new notes and annotate into those notes. And then you keep going, right? So you do this for the 6 weeks of your rotation for psych. And then at the end of the rotation, our shorter term goal is we're studying for that shelf, right? I need to do good on that shelf because there's a huge correlation on how you do on shelves versus how you do on your exam. So you must study for those shelves during your psych rotation, for example. I just recently was told by some friends about the Clinical Mastery series. There are Facebook groups, and we'll put the link below, that will bring you to a page where there's a lot of discussion about each of these Clinical Mastery series exams, which are just mini exams, about 50 questions, that you can find on the MBME website. So those will really prep you to see how much you learned in the past 6 weeks. And then you take your shelf. For the people that don't have time consuming, their days are still pretty stacked. So instead of having a lot of hospital experience, you're going to have a lot of experience answering questions and reading explanations and learning on your own. And either way, you're putting in a lot of mental capacity into these days of studying. You should at least do a block a day, especially your first run. Keep it the same thing, subject-based. How I would do it is use your review book to determine what you're going to do questions on next. And a lot of the learning kind of depends on where your knowledge exists right now, because everyone's been studying for 2 years. Everyone's knowledge base is a little different. Some people may be able just to do questions and they can do well on them except for some management stuff and they can learn as they go. Others may need to go back and review some pathophysiology and review some diseases to make a diagnosis. So for those students, I would really recommend doing UWorld questions along with your review book and annotating it. And if you dedicate your days to this exam, you will definitely be successful. As far as assessments, I'm sure everyone knows you have UWorld assessments, MBME assessments. And I'm going to tell you my experience with them. I've read about 40 or 50 experiences from forums about their correlations as well. So from consensus of people I read about, UWorld was more predictive and a lot closer to their real exam score. And MBMEs tended to overshoot. In my experience, all of them overshoot. So I think I was kind of an outlier. I averaged 263 on UWorld. I averaged 268 on MBMEs, and I ended up with a 254, which I'm still extremely grateful for. But I did score closer to my UWorld, so I guess that's partially true in my experience. So how I did my assessments, or how I timed it out, is as soon as I was done with my third year, I took one assessment just to see where I was at. And then I took one every week to 2 weeks, studying in between, and then I take an MBME. I keep repeating that. For a total of about 6 weeks, I studied for CK. So that was my experience. As far as test day goes, it was a little different than step one. I was actually pretty nervous for the first 15-ish minutes of step one. CK, I kind of just went into it and was like, oh, here we go again, right? Like, I wasn't as excited or nervous. I was kind of just like, let's just get this thing over with. I did take note of the style of questions that they ask, and I wanted to share them with you. My exam was about 318 questions. I noticed in my exam, at least, there were 4 types of main questions that they asked. The most common, of course, everyone knows, is what is the next step in management? Hardest question on the CK and the most commonly asked question. So that is one of the questions you always got to ask yourself, is what is the next step based off of the information they gave you already? Because it changes depending on what they tell you. The second most common question asked that I noticed was, what is the diagnosis? And in my opinion, this is step one. We all learn signs and symptoms and diagnosing a disease from step one. So this was the second most common question I saw, and it was completely step one oriented, in my opinion. The third most common question asked was actually step one style questions. So pathophysiology, pharmacology, side effects of a drug is a common question asked. And then the mechanism of the drug, not so much. But it is important to know because of the side effects, right? They usually go hand in hand because of the pathophysiology. And the fourth question that was asked, not that much on my exam at least, was what's the best test to diagnose them? Not necessarily the best step, but what do we do to diagnose this patient, right? Heart failure, okay, we're going to use an echo, right? But it's not necessarily always the next best step in management. So as you can notice there on my exam, half of those questions are all step one oriented. So this kind of reminds you, you cannot just forget your foundation. You always have to keep that foundation, especially for pathophysiology, in the back of your mind, because you will see these questions and we'll see them on step 3 again. So try to understand them as best as you can. And if you don't, always keep your step 1 notes on standby to help you to reflect on those type of questions. So on a final note, I just want to take a minute to mention about our group, our family as physicians. We are all on the same team, but a lot of times in medical school or pre-med, we kind of lose touch of that because this is really a competition for us. But we cannot lose touch with what our ultimate goal is to help individuals, our communities, our nation, and even the world to be a better place to live in. So I want you to reflect. Once you become successful, look back and reflect on all the obstacles you went through. And when you're looking back, see some students that are having similar obstacles you did and help pull them up. Because something that people don't always realize is that many of us have the will to do well in medicine, but a lot of us don't have the way. So it's our job as practicing physicians to help guide for our future physicians the way so they can be successful as well. Thank you everybody for watching. Again, I hope this was beneficial to you. If you have any questions or comments, you can either comment below or you can email me at alex@medspired.org. Thank you. Is that okay? Is that okay? I don't know if I talk too much about it.
I might have tears in my eyes. Wow. High five.
Yeah. Nice.
Oh, we got it, bro. We got it. We got it.
No drill. We're good.
Thanks for watching. To learn more about our organization, you can visit MEDspired.org. You may have noticed the .org at the end of our URL. MEDspiration is a 501c3 public benefit nonprofit organization. So when you choose to support us by donating, subscribing to our channel, and or following us on social media, you're choosing to support open global health, education, and medicine that can inspire the advancement of our human potential. Cheers to a better world.